Nation of Fitin10, welcome to day 18 of the challenge. And we are just past 1/4 through the challenge, if you can believe it. Next week, we're going to run scans on Wednesday and Thursday. I have not put up a calendar, but I will make sure I do that today. I will get it up and have it up ready for you to book your second scan, your first comparative scan. Yesterday, I talked about weight training for fat loss. And I want to make it clear to you that when we add muscle tissue, when we add just muscle tissue, this is not what is considered bulk. Bulk is the addition of fat or fat and muscle tissue. All right, so if you weight train but you're in a calorie deficit, you're just going to get smaller. And I will remind you that if you were to replace all the fat on your body with muscle, not that I would want you to do this, or not that you could do this anyways, because you need fat to survive. But if you were to do this, you would be a smaller person, because muscle tissue is less voluminous than fat tissue is on a gram per gram basis, okay, on a weight basis. All right, if you took the 40 pounds of fat that you have, let's just say you have 40 pounds of fat, you replace it with 40 pounds of muscle, you'll be a smaller person. If you add lean muscle tissue and your fat levels stay the same, all right, let's just go into this scenario. You will look more toned. You will look leaner because your body fat percentage drops. So even if your fat stores stay the same, but you increase your muscle mass, you will look leaner, and ultimately you'll look more toned. When we talk about toning, by the way, we're talking about adding muscle tissue. That's what we're doing. Okay, or developing more of those fast twitch muscle fibers. We'll not get into that right now, but think of it just as training with heavy weights. Heavy weights builds more muscle tone. All right, we'll talk about that in a future video. When you're adding muscle, you are not bulking. You are bulking when you overconsume. All right, lifting heavy weights does not promote fat loss. No form of exercise does not promote fat gain. No form of exercise promotes fat gain. And I will also remind you, and this comes up to my number one point, which I mentioned yesterday, that when you have more muscle mass, it's harder for you to maintain your fat mass. It's even harder for you to gain fat mass because you are expending more energy just at rest per day. So it becomes harder. All right? Weight training is, I don't want to say it's a must, but it is extremely helpful if you are trying to keep fat off your body, period. Weight training is a long-term solution, part of a long-term solution, to you keeping fat off. All right, so yesterday I went through, the first point was added muscle mass increases your basal metabolic rate, right? The amount of energy that you burn through every day. This has nothing to do with exercise or non-exercise. We're just talking about sustaining the body at rest. All right, so you're burning more energy at rest. Number two, I mentioned about increased metabolism outside of your BMR. All right, so after you weight train, your body's got to go through the process of restoring fuel stores. It's got to go through tissue repair. It's got to go through hormone balancing. This all requires extra energy, and this takes hours, if not days, to go through. So you're in a heightened metabolic state as you go through that recovery that doesn't happen from other forms of exercise. Number three, we're building in this, not just muscle tissue, but we're building other connective tissue like bone, tendons, ligaments, your nervous system, and these are all things that are lending to your lean body mass, which are helping to keep you leaner as well. Keep you leaner and healthier, including your joints, allowing better movement, allowing better force production, allowing for better reaction time. All right, so maybe a little bit out of the realm of fat loss. But when we think of an exercise as a building exercise, which weight training we can think of that. Okay, it's both a building exercise, building of lean tissue, and it's contributing to fat loss, it's doing both those things, this is a good thing because we are building the tissues that keep us younger. We are building the tissues that keep us younger. We're also building the tissues that allow us to stay smaller. Yes, that's right, smaller. On a volume basis, we are a smaller person with less fat, more muscle. We are a smaller person overall. Okay, so some other reasons here, weight training for fat loss. The more muscle mass that we have, so we can assume that if we're weight training, now obviously as you go through time, your weight training is going to be harder and harder for you to put on muscle mass, but let's just assume that, even just for the maintenance of muscle mass, we don't want to lose muscle mass, okay? The point is here, the more muscle mass we have, the more real estate, the more area we have to store energy, in particular sugar. So there's less chance of storing sugar as fat with the more muscle mass you have. You also have more doorways, okay, more insulin receptors. You have more doorways to allow sugar in. You also have more insulin sensitivity, which is basically, you can think of it as doorways inviting the sugar in, so to speak. So we have better regulation of sugar, which leads to a downstream effect of overall improvement in all kinds of health markers, all kinds, including your cholesterol carriers. Another reason to weight train to keep fat off, and this is an indirect thing. Well, I guess the last point was a little bit indirect too. Hormone balancing, okay? Restoring hormones back to a more healthier level or even a younger level, you can think of it that way. Restoring things like testosterone and estrogen and human growth hormone. And these all play a part in terms of keeping fat off, especially fat in certain areas, including things like fat in the midsection. Women, especially for those of you who are going through post-menopause or menopause, you tend to see more of that visceral fat. We're going to see less of this if you keep weight training. All right, so we see a rebalancing of hormones. We see an increase of those good hormones as well. Okay, those hormones that we have when we're younger. Super, super important when it comes to, among many things, keeping a better or healthier or a more optimal body composition. Okay? All right, let's get to the message of the day. Actually, before I move on, I want to state it again. Weight training is part of a long-term solution to keep fat off. I don't want to say it's absolutely necessary, but it is integral. It is extremely helpful in keeping fat off as you age, okay, among many other things. It's much harder to keep fat off without weight training. Let me just say it that way, all right? So weight training is an integral part for fat loss. All right, message of the day. The difference between who you are and who you want to be lies in what you do. The difference between who you are and who you want to be lies in what you do. Part of the reason I have you log your food and plan out your food and do all this stuff, putting these things in your calendar, is because it helps us to be more organized and it helps to lead to better execution, right? And execution is what makes the difference. We need to execute on these things. We need to make them happen. And we need to execute on change. We need to have enough change in order to see enough change, right? So the difference between who you are and who you want to be lies in what you do. All right, that's all I'm going to say. There's much more I can say, but I'll just end up talking forever. So positive energy, positive vibes, believe in yourself, and for the love of God, give some gratitude, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow. See you guys.